The second part of this course is about popular fiction, and that is what this tutorial is about. The word popular comes from the Greek word populus, which means people. Popular literature includes those writings intended for the masses and those that find favor with large audiences. It can be distinguished from artistic literature in that it is designed primarily to entertain. Popular literature, unlike high literature, generally does not seek a high degree of formal beauty or subtlety. It's not intended to endure. Instead, it's aimed towards a large audience and it's designed to be consumed. Grub Street was the place where printing presses were based, and it's a term often associated with writers of the popular press. Chapbooks, cheap books, were the first form of popular publishing for the people. These books were sold without approval of publishers, which means that writers could spread their ideas freely, but also that no one controlled the quality of the works. So popular books resulted in a freedom for writers at the same time as these works were considered to have less quality, less value, and lower status. The link below has a schedule of the differences between popular, scholarly, and professional writings. Popular fiction is often referred to as genre fiction because it's intentionally generic so as to attract various readers, and it's also bound by genre conventions so that the genre and form, and often also the story, plot, and characters, are easy to recognize. Some of the more popular genres are action, adventure, crime, detective, fantasy, horror, mystery, romance, science fiction, and western. And these works are rapidly consumed by a huge reading public and are often published in paperback to keep the cost down and also make them more accessible to a larger audience. And nowadays, the term literature is expanding, and the word text usually refers both to printed texts and other media forms of fiction, such as movies, TV series, and games. And many of these media forms help spreading popular fiction and also help popularizing it in terms of, for example, fan fiction or fan movies. However, not all multimedia fiction is popular. And popular literature has for a long time been disregarded in academia and has by many been regarded as less worthy in a sense. However, that idea has quickly changed during the last decades, and instead there's now a huge interest in popular fiction and popular literature. Now that academia is taking an interest, popular fiction is spreading even more and is gaining in status. There are new strategies and new approaches to work with all modes of literature, both canonical works, popular works, and texts in a wider understanding, such as advertisements, games, song lyrics, etc. The study of popular literature is a way to study popular culture in both the past and the present. You can see what attracts the people in a certain place and at a certain time. The 4 works we study in this part are, in addition to being works of popular literature, also popularized versions of the 2 classical works, Pride and Prejudice and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And I'm now going to talk about the popularization process. There are numerous articles and books written about popularizing literature, and 2 examples that are relevant for this course are Chick Lit, Popularizing Fiction for Women, and Jane Austen and Company, Remaking the Past into Contemporary Culture. And there are of course many examples of texts where the same story is reused over and over again, and the same goes for the setting or type of characters. There are also numerous examples of intertextuality, where one text is incorporated into or mentioned in another text, such as the mentioning of the TV series Pride and Prejudice in the novel Bridget Jones' Diary. Although both these two literary strategies could be said to be popularization processes, or parts thereof, they're not popularization processes per se. The popularization process means making an inaccessible work accessible for more people. It's thus the same piece of fiction that's retold in another format. Is Bridget Jones' Diary an example of popularization of Pride and Prejudice? Yes. Bridget Jones' Diary is the popularization of the novel Pride and Prejudice, and at the same time, it contains elements of intertextuality from the TV series Pride and Prejudice. And it doesn't matter if the texts we're working with could be seen as intertexts rather than popularized versions, or both. As long as the popularization process is noticeable, the texts are of interest to us. The other side of the popularizing coin is the classicizing process, which means that you make something classic or that you imitate a classical style. So the reworking of a classical novel could either be seen as a popularizing process, making a classical work popular for the people, or as a classicizing process, making a popular work appear more classical. A rework doesn't necessarily need to be either one or the other. That is, either a popularizing or classicizing process, but could be both at the same time or neither, depending on what effect the story has. There's no way we as readers, watchers, consumers can know about the writers, directors, creators' motives behind the rework, not even if he or she, they, were to state their reasons. Saying it doesn't make it true, and it's not what we're working with in literary analysis. We only work with the effects the fictional work has, and that means that a rework or recycling could be regarded either as a popularizing or classicizing, or both or neither. In this course, we study 4 works of popular fiction. 3 are reworks of Pride and Prejudice, and out of these, 2 are the same story told in different format, namely the novel Bridget Jones' Diary and the movie Bridget Jones' Diary. Another rework of Austen's novel is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Helen Fielding's Bridget Jones' Diary, a novel, and Sharon Maguire's Bridget Jones' Diary. Let's begin with Helen Fielding's Bridget Jones' Diary, a novel. It was originally published as a column series in The Independent and The Daily Telegraph, in a way similar to how novels such as Samuel Richardson's Pamela were published during the 18th century. The novel Pride and Prejudice, but primarily the BBC TV series from 1995, is mentioned rather frequently in the novel. In that way, there are instances of intertextuality of Pride and Prejudice in the TV series in Bridget Jones' Diary, a novel. At the same time, the story, some of the characters, and some of the main themes of Pride and Prejudice function as the basis for Bridget Jones' Diary. So it's also a case of popularization. Similarities: Singletons, love, not only marriage, the flirty, Mr. Wickham and Danielle Cleaver, the posh, rich, good but wrongly accused, Mr. Darcy, pushy mothers, Pemberley, etc. In the movie version of Bridget Jones' Diary, they cast Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy to make a reappearance of Mr. Darcy from the BBC TV series. There's a sort of intertextuality in the choice of character, since the actor Colin Firth is mentioned in connection with his portrayal of Mr. Darcy in the novel. There is an interview available on YouTube where Renée Zellweger portrays Bridget Jones and interviews Colin Firth, which is then rather a reference to the TV series than to the movie. Apart from Bridget Jones' Diary, both the novel and the movie, there are several other popularized versions of Pride and Prejudice, such as the Hindi movie Bride and Prejudice, and there is also rumor of a musical production that will be performed in London's West End. There are also numerous pieces of fan fiction, fan videos, fan movies, etc. on Jane Austen's novel and the various adaptations, along with several academic and/or critical articles on the similarities and differences between Pride and Prejudice and Bridget Jones' Diary, and all of the texts that contribute to this ever-expanding Pride and Prejudice phenomenon, or P&P universe. There's a fan website called The Republic of Pemberley that you can check out if you want to read fan productions. Pride, Prejudice and Zombies from 2009 is very much a popularized work, starting out as a popularization project. It was written for a wide audience by using popular elements from popular fiction such as zombies, pirates, and ninjas, and combining them with elements from highbrow literature classics such as War and Peace and Wuthering Heights. Seth Grahame Smith is the writer of the project novel, so the whole project used whatever was popular at the time in order to attract a wide audience. Since its publication, the novel has made its way through the bestseller lists around the world. The novel itself can be called a parody novel, or a mashup between Pride and Prejudice and various works of zombie fiction. The novel has since its publication in 2009 spread further by being released as a deluxe edition containing graphic illustrations. A sequel has also been published, and there are talks about a prequel. In addition, there's also a video game, and there are talks about the novel being adapted into a movie. So just as Bridget Jones' Diary, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is taking on a life of its own, spreading through various media forms, which is a sign of its popularity. The anticipation for the novel itself was spread through blogs, articles, and podcasts. The fourth popular and popularized piece of fiction we're working with in this part of the course is the movie Matrix, which in a way can be read as a reworking of Carol's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. The movie Matrix, sometimes referred to as The Matrix and sometimes only as Matrix, differs from the other popularized pieces of work in that it's not an adaptation per se. There are, however, many parts from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland that are reused and popularized, one can say, in The Matrix. The movie also draws heavily on other pieces of fiction, both classic and popular, such as the Bible and Hong Kong action movies. There are numerous references from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in The Matrix. Their presence draws attention to a familiar story where the boundaries between real and fantasy are blurred and thus help create the same confusion in the more recent work. Just as the previously presented popularized pieces of fiction, The Matrix has spread beyond the initial movie. First of all, the movie turned into a trilogy. Second, there's an animated version called the Animatrix. Also, there's a computer game, and now a whole franchise. With all the fictional works of the course, both classics and popular, there are numerous pieces of fan fiction, fan movies, and fandoms on the internet. So these works, although static pieces of fiction, are also very dynamic since they keep spreading, changing, and expanding into various media channels. That was all about popular fiction.